Recently in Florida, a rocket from SpaceX blew up on return from a mission to resupply the space station. That SpaceX project, along with its brethren such as Blue Origin and some of the other vendors in that private public space, are out there. Jonathan Salem Baskin, who's the president of Arcadia Communications Lab, is here to talk to us about not just SpaceX, but technology risk.
Yeah, Fritz, it's a fascinating topic these days because, technology risk in the old days, we were just talking off camera about punch cards and, the old days of technology, risk was spread around amongst multiple. That was the standard approach to risk, was that the more parties involved, the better off each one of the risk assessors were. And that's been the model ever since, Isabel and Ferdinand funded Columbus to discover America in the 1400s, right? They shared the risk. Our popular myth now is that, in fact, it's too risky, that group effort is too risky, and instead what we want to do is assign responsibility and all the risk to sometimes a stoic single entrepreneur, in this case Elon Musk at SpaceX, or to a lesser degree Jeff Bezos at Blue Origin, although his rockets tend to not blow up as often. And the question, because we do a lot of work in the innovation space, is are we really risking a misassessment of risk? Because arguably there's a ton of risk involved in having one vendor trying to figure out how to build a rocket versus a universe of partners, arguably bureaucratically, more slowly, more responsibly, but more reliably working on the same answers.
And that's, of course, what happened with the Apollo project, that it was the lowest bidder that won. And, of course, unfortunately, some of the things like with Apollo 1 when it caught fire in the pad, but...
Absolutely, but if you think about it, I mean, that one that was, a generation ago, the technology... 10 years prior had been propeller aircraft, was the cutting edge of tech. And when you think about how quickly and how aggressively they invented that space program in the span of a little less than a decade, I'm not belittling it, but that one fiery explosion actually in the grand scheme of things was a pretty good track record. So, and it's interesting because, NASA really pioneered this whole idea of outsourcing. I mean, there were hundreds of vendors involved in that program, and now we've decided that we want stoic individual innovators to do everything from invent digital apps to build rocket ships or autonomous cars. And I would argue when it comes to an app, the failure risk of that app is that you don't order your dinner. I can live with that. The failure of my SpaceX blowing up or my Tesla autonomous driving crashing, that risk is much higher.
Now, specifically, we're talking, like you said, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Richard Branson.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, there's I believe it's the consortium of Boeing and a few other large firms that, I don't know if you could call them stoic individuals, but certainly they're not a public domain entity.
Right.
I mean, they're publicly traded companies. So there's our universe of the universe, so to speak. So where are we going with these firms? I mean, are we then going to see kind of a pivot away from them, do you think? Or maybe there's going to be more opportunity for entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so, and I think the answer, you're going to hate this, is both. On one hand, I think the reality of entrepreneurs, because of the nature of digital tech and technology more broadly, and the availability of funding and our stomach for risk as consumers and as investors, I think that's an important channel for innovative development, whether it's in the space program or in digital apps. I think we're going to see a resurgence, though, of a recognition of that public-private partnership, that those vendor coalitions, if you will, of large businesses who can also use the same technology platforms to think small, think agile, and also be productive, so that you, in fact, have multiple developments. This idea that it's one or the other, I think the pendulum is going to start swinging back, and we're going to see actually a nice balance of both.
And in fact, you're mentioning agile, of course, that's really the key to it, that whether you're large or small, that's the direction to be able to, instead of have this huge project that's what's called waterfall, where we take in, 6 months later, a year later, determine, maybe we should have changed at the beginning.
Right.
Now it's incremental and fast changing, so both the small and the large can take advantage of that.
Absolutely, and the fact that the even now SpaceX is what they're accomplishing is built in large part on what public-private partnerships accomplished, especially with the government 10 or 15 years ago. All those big breakthroughs from Isabel and Ferdinand on through to landing on the moon, DARPANet, all these things were originally were public-private exploration that set a new benchmark, and then that enabled individuals as well as consortia to build off them. And I think what we need is actually another wave of that public-private partnership. Let's set another benchmark so Elon Musk isn't busy trying to build it on his own.
Jonathan, thanks for joining us this morning.
My pleasure.